Welcome to Thriving in the Game, a podcast dedicated to exploring what Black women need to navigate the corporate world of technology, offering insights, strategies, and personal stories that will affirm, validate, and encourage you on your journey up the corporate ladder. I'm your host, Alicia. Join me as we learn how to thrive together. Welcome to our final bonus episode in our last Season 1 Profile in Thriving. This conversation brings it all together. We've heard corporate tech career journeys from the perspective of an early career Black woman, one who transitioned into tech, one who chose to leave tech, and one who is running a successful business alongside her tech career. And now we close out with a focus on rising higher in the corporate technology environment. All throughout this first season, we emphasize the importance of being strategic in your career, learning to navigate the potential pitfalls, pigeonholes, and challenges. But what does it look like to leverage that strategy into promotion? How do you welcome new opportunities, even when they're not your ideal? What are the unspoken skills you need to be aware of as you develop and prepare for promotion? As you promote, how do you maintain it all without losing yourself? Our fifth and final profile in Thriving highlights the career journey of Charlitta Hatch, a nationally recognized business change agent with a heart for service and a mind for results. With over 18 years in technology, she has impacted clients at IBM, Accenture, and Slalom. Since June of 2024, Charlitta has served as the inaugural Chief Data and Analytics Officer for the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, where she oversees the innovation and data division for the 15th largest city in the country. As a 3-time children's book author, Charlitta is passionate about shaping the next generation of the Charlotte community. She's co-host of Behind the Throne, a podcast that focuses on the privilege and responsibility of wearing the crown of motherhood. Alongside her husband, Mark, together they parent their 2 children, Mark III and Amelia. Charlitta is an excellent example of strategically navigating the corporate tech game. She inspires us to operate in grace and with a learner's mindset. She reminds us that you absolutely belong here. Let the haters be your motivation. Don't be afraid to reach out and make connections. Clearly identify your manager versus your mentor versus your sponsor early, because they can all help to shape your career in different ways. Avoid the Black girl trap. Build your confidence by learning the technical skills and saying yes, because you can do anything for a year. Be appropriately authentic and learn to have the tough conversations. And as you continue to rise higher in your career, understand that you cannot do it all on your own. Learn how to outsource and to lean on your community. Join us in this conversation as we learn more about Charlitta's career and what it looks like to thrive as a Black woman rising in tech.
So one, I am a first-generation college student. My grandfather had an 8th grade education. My grandmother never went to formal schooling. My grandfather taught her how to read. My grandmother had 4 boys. They all graduated high school, and then I graduated college. And anybody who's a firstborn daughter and then the first granddaughter on both sides of the family can understand that privilege of being high achieving, perfectionist, kind of standard, to the point where there were like over 20 people took me to college. I was so proud that I was there. But oh, what a responsibility that you have. And so having that, in some ways, there's stress, and you deal with your mental health and anxiety and perfectionism and being the only in all these spaces because you want everybody that's poured into you to not feel like they made a bad investment in picking you. But then when you get into these spaces and you are navigating and being the only, you do start to get confident through the different experiences that you have. And so coming from Hampton University, where I graduated from, like, I have to have a good job. In order to have a good job, I have to be a banker, because Charlotte was the 2nd largest banking city and still is in the country. So I had an interview and I was flying back from my final interview with the financial company in New York. And I was like, it's just what you have to do in order to be successful. And I saw this man in the airport walking fast and talking on the phone with the suitcase. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. That's the job I want to do. Talk about confidence. I walked up to him, interrupted his call and said, excuse me, what is it that you do? Because I'm a graduating senior from college and I want to do what you're doing. And after he got past the shock of me interrupting him, he gave me his business card and he hired me at my first job at IBM and then took me to Accenture. And he's still a great mentor for me today. And I share that story because those small moments teach you that the worst thing that can happen is no. But most people want to help you. You have to get past yourself. And I think being a Black woman growing up, being firstborn daughter, firstborn granddaughter, being the only in academic spaces, trying to figure out how you continue to climb gives you a level of confidence, that Black girl magic that you don't know where it comes from, but it's all those small moments. And so even ending up in tech, I didn't choose that path. I thought I was going to be in finance. It was that moment in the airport that put me on this trajectory.
Wow. Let's go back to that. You saw someone in the airport. He hires you. Obviously, you're smart. You're amazing. But how did you start to establish your career there to the point that he also wanted to bring you along to Accenture?
So my first project, I had no idea what consulting was. I didn't understand the concept. I went to boot camp. They gave you like 12 weeks of consulting. And then I didn't know if I was going to go to the client and it's just me. And so you start to take the instructions from your project leaders on what you're doing. You're putting in extra because that's what you've learned to do. And like, okay, I've got to study at night. I've got to prepare for my meetings. And this one man pulled me to the side and he said, you don't act like your name and you don't work the way you look. I was in shock. I went to the bathroom. I called my mom, bless my mom, who's like, your name is special. You are not ghetto. You are a strong woman. There is nothing about you that's this or that, whatever. And I was like, Mom, I'm a sellout. I didn't know how to respond at 22 to what that man said. I knew I should have said something, but I had never had it that blatant before. And that was also kind of a pivotal moment because he could have ran me out of there. I could have said, I don't belong. I don't fit in. I instead said, I'm going to be your boss. And that is how I have operated throughout my entire tech career, where I am used to being the only Black person, Black female leader, Black leader, always in those spaces. But when those moments happen, I'm like, nope, you're not going to kick me out. I am going to take over. And that energy and that drive of let your haters be your motivator, that's what started it. So I went deep into the platform that I was learning. I decided to be a certified trainer just so I could learn all different types of content. I got on global teams, like really just said yes to everything I would not have normally said yes to because I just wanted that man to be wrong.
That's really good because I don't know how I would have responded to that.
That's the worst part. I felt horrible. I didn't respond.
Sometimes I think in those moments, no response might be the best response if you're not fully prepared to handle that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm having these conversations because, like I said, later we'll talk about that because those things will likely happen. I want to say may, but we know at some point you will experience some type of energy in your career. We know that there's still this undercurrent that often believes that we don't deserve to be in the spaces that we have absolutely earned our way into.
Now more than ever. And I think having a sponsor, somebody who's talking to you, telling you what to do, somebody who's talking with you and really understanding what you're going through. And then when you're not in the room, who's amplifying your name, knowing who those are and being really clear and saying, are you my sponsor? Are you my manager? Are you my mentor? What does that role look like? So you're not confused and they're not confused on what the relationship is and what you expect from them. But I would absolutely say that my first manager at IBM was not only my manager, but also my mentor. And he was very, very calculated on how he navigated me. I didn't always understand those things. So for example, I wanted to do change management. I'm like, that is going to be my sweet spot. I'm naturally good at it. Change management, training, communications, all of that. He said, absolutely not. You will not fall into the Black girl trap. This is what this white man told me. You're going to learn these technical skills and you're going to see change management as the plus one, but it is not going to be your craft. And so I would say that's the other part of being in that early career space. I was not a computer science major. I was a business management major. I had to really work to be a functional configuration consultant, understanding the logic, the engineering behind it. Even though I didn't back end code, I still had to understand it to do the front end development. And having that, even for 3 to 4 years, is something that people can't take away from you. If I hadn't have had him and I wasn't listening to him, I would have never gained that. Having somebody that you will listen to, even when you don't want to, because they know what you don't know. Because there's no part of me that wanted to do what I did the first 4 years of my career. But I give that advice to Black women now. A lot of them actually don't receive it. I give that advice very clearly to them about how you invest and do certain things in your career that give you that foundation and framework, even if it's not what you want to do. You have to earn the right to do what you want to do. And if you start off doing what you want to do, you will likely be limiting yourself long term.
That's good. I had a conversation with a brand strategist out of Baltimore named Tony S. Brown, and she's an amazing Black woman that focuses on brand strategy and creating brands specifically for Black women. That was a message that she reiterated as well, is that you have to listen. It's great to have a mentor, but if you're not listening to the advice that you're receiving, it really does work against you. The other thing that strikes me is, like you said, being open to something different that you really hadn't considered before. And so how did developing those technical skills set the stage for you to continue forward?
It gave me the ability to speak the language with confidence, understand it. As you know, when we start to occupy spaces, particularly as you progress in the technical careers, where people do not expect that you're the boss, you're the leader, right? And so when you're able to speak the language, walk the walk, and be credible in that space, you're like, no, I've done this. I've been there. I can manage you. I think, again, going back to that confidence piece, you cannot really be confident if you don't know what you know. When you know what you know, people cannot take it from you. So you will not easily be shaken. But if you don't know anything, then the first time somebody asks you a question, you start to lose your confidence and you're less likely to want to continue. And so I think it is really critical to understand your craft, knowing your craft ins and outs. Again, people don't expect us to be in these spaces, and they will try to try you. Even though we're fast forwarding, in my current role, my first week, I had 5 different people come up to me and ask me who I know and how did I get there. Some had the audacity to tell me that this was their job. I took it from them. When people are like, how'd you get here? Who'd you know? With confidence, I could say, have you read my bio? And left it at that. Now, the change management piece, hear it out. You would assume that most women are good communicators. You will assume that most women are looking at how people feel and how to get people on board and all of those things. Black women have an extra, I believe, Black girl magic, and I'm 10 toes down on it, right? Have an extra kind of secret sauce. We're able to quickly read a room. We pick up on feelings. We're looking at interpersonal dynamics. We're just good at change management. In our life, with our friends. And so, of course, at work, we're good at communication. People think we're aggressive, but we're really assertive. We're direct. We're clear, right? And so all of those things manifest when you're going through a big technical transformation. You want somebody who's really good at the job. If you start out there, but you don't actually know the system, that's the trap. Because I can put you in as a graduating senior from college without question, put you on the change management team, and you're going to do great. But what's the first thing that clients cut from a project?
Change management.
Right? Now, they'll say, we don't have this development skills. We don't know this new language. We don't know this platform. Project management, change management, communication. They think they have it in-house. Now, granted, most of the time, they don't have the expertise, the tools, the accelerators, right? But that's the first thing they think. So then, and this is very consultant driven in this conversation, but then who's likely to be on the bench?
That would be us.
Right? But what happens if you actually know the system? You've led the development lifecycle. You've led testing. You understand deployment. You understand how to work when the system's down. You understand hypercare. You understand all of these different aspects of the technology lifecycle. And you do change management. It's like, okay, well, they cut it out of this contract, but we can put you over here because you know this. That's the trap. Because we don't want to actually do that part because we also are really good at that other part.
Right. It's easy. You can succeed in that area.
It's just your strength, right? So easy for us as our superpower, but for those who don't have it, think about it. People who can't communicate themselves out of a paper bag, people who don't care about other people and how they feel about change, right? There's plenty of people, most people, the country don't care about people, right? And so you can even start drawing parallels to when every major movement in this country, from voting rights to Black Lives Matter, who was on the front lines? Yet who benefited from it? Now draw those parallels from who's on the front lines of trying to get people on board for these big technology implementation.
Right.
Change makers.
And again, who does not necessarily benefit?
Exactly.
And who is the first to get cut?
And when you're in the spaces and start to occupy, you start to see these conversations and then you try to share it. And then people think that you're being a hater towards them. And you're like, no, I didn't have somebody that looked like me telling me this. You think I'm hating on you?
Trying to put you on game. It reminds me a lot of that episode in Insecure when Molly, there was a new young lady in the law firm and she was loud and she had everybody cracking up. Molly tried to pull her to the side and just give her some advice, which you could say that for this podcast. We're just trying to give you some advice. And she did not respond well. She did not receive it. And eventually, who was having a private conversation with the higher ups behind the glass doors and then looking all sad-faced. So it's one of those things where my passion behind these conversations is not to talk at early career Black women. I'm not talking at you. Our goal is to talk with you and for you to walk away with knowledge so that you can continue to build the kind of career that you want to build.
Yep. When I first got into leadership, I felt it was my job to protect Black women because I never had that from a Black woman. And what I realized that regardless of the color of our skin, that not everybody wants that. My biggest lesson learned is that I'm here if you want it, but I can't save you if you don't want to be saved. I can't push that off. But it is hurtful because you would like to think like, I see you. I mean, I had a client come to me and say, is this the club? A very senior male leader, because girls were coming in, eyelashes and body contrast, the clear shoes. And I pulled them all to the side, basically was like, if you can wear it on the weekend, you shouldn't wear it to work, blah, blah, blah. And they went to HR and said, talk about diversity and inclusion and being your authentic self. And she's telling me I can't be my authentic self. And I was like, whoa.
That authenticity conversation is just really interesting for me. I think sometimes, not just Black women, I think younger women can conflate, as a friend of mine said, they conflate authenticity with being appropriate in a space.
Time and place. I'm like, your authentic self at work, your authentic self at church, your authentic self, right? Like there is a time and a place. And let's just say your authentic self likes to use the F-bomb. Do you do that at church?
Right.
Right? No, because it's not appropriate, but it doesn't mean that people don't want you to come as you are. But like there are unspoken rules that maybe you don't go around saying the F-bomb. Even people who aren't Christians don't do that, right? They're like, well, I'm in the house of the Lord, you know? So yes, the same thing at work. There is a time and place at work. You should be your authentic self, but the work version of yourself.
Exactly. You said something that I think is a good segue. So you've talked about building your technical skills. In some ways, you've talked a little bit about soft skills, but you also mentioned those unspoken things. And so that's literally a question that I had for you. What are some of those unspoken skills that early career Black women need to develop when they are entering into the corporate technology environment?
So there's two things that I always look for when I interview. The first one is a learner mindset. I will always ask, what is the last thing you learned and how did you learn it? Because technology, I can hire you for one set of skills today, and in 3 to 5 years, those skills will not be what I need. But how are you learning and evolving? And I think that overall investment that you're willing to make, not be a know-it-all, but constantly show and demonstrate that you're a learner and you can stay on the cutting edge and learn new things are critical. And you will notice there are some people that just want to stay stagnant. The second thing that I will say is your critical thinking skills, because we talk about technology solving complex problems. And there are a ton of people who truly cannot take a set of issues and figure out how to solve them. How do you assess that as you're a hiring manager? You start to look and say things like, give me a time where you had one sentence and it was something that you've never done before, but you were now needed to go build out a whole plan, have a meeting with a client, and report back to an executive. How did you go about solving that? Because it's not about getting the right answer. It's about seeing how you go about what resources did you use? Who did you call on? What did you leverage? How did you research it? How did you get to the answer? People are problem spotters. They're not problem solvers. And so those two things to me are big unspoken rules. If you want to progress, is staying curious and being a critical problem solver. The other thing I would say is, and you can see just typically in technology, a lot of people who are super brilliant and super smart do not necessarily know how to translate and communicate that message. So if you're able to do both, what a unique superpower. Knowing your craft and being able to articulate it. And then not for nothing, everything is political. So my strategy has always been to try to attach myself to people who look like they're progressing. If your manager is not moving, you're probably not going to move. If the people you're taking advice from are not moving every 2 to 3 years, you're probably not going to move. And so being very strategic about who you attach yourself to, because this is not summer camp. So I don't have to attach myself to someone who looks like me, who I want to hang out with on Friday night and do all of that. If I'm here to be my most ambitious self, I need to also see who is being ambitious and align myself that way. And remember to reach back as you're moving up too.
So how do you do that in a way that is authentic to you? Again, if we look at the example of the gentleman you interrupted in the airport who then brought you into IBM and then now you're at Accenture, clearly that is someone that you developed an alignment with. But even for myself, networking has always been very challenging for me. It doesn't feel natural to me. Now, one-on-one is great. If I meet someone singularly, great way to network, keep in touch, all of that good stuff. But generally, the way we see networking in our corporate environments, I tend to see a lot of early career Black women. We seem to like, that doesn't feel good. I feel like I'm using, or how do you get past that?
So one, I would say, and again, I think we are so good at this. Don't call it networking. Call it connecting. Call it building relationships in whatever way is authentic to you. So if I also don't really like, and most people don't like to be at some banquet and like walk up to a stranger, right? I mean, everybody feels uncomfortable with that, I think. But I'm a birthday person. And so I typically am like, let me find out your birthday. And then I'm going into, are you a Gemini? I'm a Gemini. And that's my way, right? I think if yours is reading, if it's binge watching the Game of Thrones, you don't have to make it stuffy. And people will appreciate the humanization of you trying to connect with them and build a relationship versus like, hello, what do you do? I know when I was planning different events, in my previous role, I'm like, you know what? I'm a woman. I don't want to smoke cigars. I don't want to go golf. I don't want to drink bourbon. I started having quarterly women's executive sessions. We did floral making, cocktail making. We can create our own space of things that we want to do. We don't have to fall into and pretend that we like the things that guys like just because they have the majority of the executive spaces. The more of us that feel comfortable in those spaces, we can create what the session is going to be, the experience to build relationships in our most authentic way. So I would say, if you think about it like, you know what? If I was in the elevator and I didn't know you, I would speak. And I probably would say, nice shirt, you look cute, right? Why is it any different at a banquet? You know how to do it, but do it your way. And it's not using people, because just like that man in the airport, if I were to ask him today, he was honored that I stopped him and then that he would have the ability to help me navigate the IBM hiring process. And I didn't embarrass him. I didn't let him down. And I have spent my entire career trying to pay it back. which is what it's all about. So if somebody asks me to do something and I can do it, I'm going to do it because multiple people have said yes to me. We have to get over ourselves in that regard.
So take us back when you shifted to Accenture. How did you continue to develop your career in that space?
The move for me with IBM, yes, my previous manager went, but we went at two different times. I was struggling because I didn't see anyone who looked like me. And the women that I saw, and we're just being candid here, looked unhappy. They were divorced. And I'm like, I don't want that life. I didn't see Black women at all. And I never had the conversation with people because I didn't know how to have it. And I was so immature in my career that I didn't even recognize the CEO of IBM was a woman. I just was in my space on our team. And that goes to show you that people leave managers and teams and all, not the organization. I think now in hindsight, if I had had a conversation with someone at IBM, they probably would have connected me to a Black woman there. I just didn't know how to do it. So I would say if you feel like you don't belong, representation matters. We know that if you're not seeing yourself, it is okay to have that conversation, even if the person doesn't look like you. Say you're missing it and saying like, I'm thinking that you can only be successful and have a family if you're a man here, because I'm not seeing any woman in my definition of success in this space. Can you help me see if that's true or not? And I don't regret it, but I wish I would have had the conversation. Not that I wouldn't have still had the move, but I didn't even give them a chance. But moving over to Accenture, the process seemed more diverse. The people that I was interacting with, that I had to do the hiring process with, the types of projects, the spaces that I was going to be in, it felt more diverse. And then when I got there, it definitely was more diverse. I feel like I grew up at Accenture and really matured in my professionalism, my leadership, life. I got married while I was at Accenture. I had my first kid while I was at Accenture. I have Crohn's disease, so I had major surgery while I was there. So just so many different life experiences while also trying to progress up the career ladder. It was truly a good time while I was there. Some of my most great learnings of how do you go deep, not only in understanding the technology, but also the business. I spent 5 years in one space where I went basically wall to wall and implementing different technology projects at one particular client. Then I went on to being someone who was known as like a fixer. You know, she's never done it before, but if the client's not happy, you can put her on it. Or if we're trying to test out a new methodology or a new system, you can put her on it. So I started to build a brand of being a problem solver. Again, I wasn't going deep in any one area towards the latter half of my career at Accenture, but I was learning new things, having an agile mindset, being known as a problem solver. And that was really cool and really paid off when I moved to Slalom. And then also now my role at the city of Charlotte.
That brings up a few things for me. So one, when you talk about your move initially, like you said, in hindsight, you wish you had had that conversation. I think being early in your career, you don't necessarily know how to ask for what you need. So I think that's a great example of having the conversation, being proactive and approaching someone. Is there anything else that you would recommend just in terms of trying to identify that support?
I think we think we're going to be rejected or that it's like a faux pas to articulate it. Even if you don't know what you need, because you don't always know what you need sometimes until you leave a space, right? But you have your feelings and we have our instinct. I think talking it out, most people are not going to reject you. We just tell ourselves the story that they are. Now, there are some bad apples, right? But most of the people that we're interacting with on day to day are not that. And so I really do think it's okay when we talk about authenticity, and that is a really good test, to have true, authentic conversations. I know I've had several of my managers tell me that I've enlightened them on what it means to be a Black woman in this space because of the conversations that I was able to have with them. Now, granted, I did not know how to have those conversations younger, but I think the younger generation is more equipped now because they are more encouraged to speak out. They've been fostered and trained in that environment through the good and bad of social media. I think being able to be on those platforms and articulate a stance. So I think that they actually have it in them to speak out on what they need. And even if they can't get down to exactly what it is, the person listening could probably help.
When I also hear you talk about the ways that you matured at Accenture, not only in life, which we touched on that a little bit in the early episode around values and how some of the things that you value in your career at an early point will change over time, right? As you have the husband, as you have the children, as you navigate sickness, illness, caring for parents, etc. Can you expound on some of the ways that you grew professionally? Did that also include promotions?
There's this philosophy that I have. And so I'll ask you, do you see the glass empty or half full? What do you see?
I see it half full.
And I always say, it doesn't matter. You still need to get more. It still needs to be filled, and in a way in which it overflows. And so in order to apply that, I come from a place of yes. Instead of having a response of no, whether it's to clients, to my manager, to my team, I'm going to come from a place of yes until I can't possibly say no. Right? Like it's illegal. It's a policy. We don't have the money, but I'm going to try. And by applying that, you get pulled into different opportunities and spaces you would not even think of because you're putting that energy out there, right? You're coming from that place of yes. And so it will guide you in that way. My second philosophy is you can do anything for a year. If you don't get paid, well, you can do anything for a year. And then after you've done it, you can reassess, and it is okay to move or to pivot. But I will tell you, for every opportunity that I have said yes to, I have had zero regrets, and I've never had to say this was not the right fit. Never, not once. And so I think that being able to be that person that as a manager that you can count on them, you're going to avail yourself to more opportunities. But it doesn't mean it's all roses. So what I had learned is that I allowed the company to tell me what I was worth. And so I've had a good amount of therapy working through, I decide how much I'm worth. And then I add tax. You don't get to say my performance rating is this, so this is how I am as a person, or this is the amount that you're willing to pay me, so this is my value. And when you don't give me what I think I deserve, that means I don't deserve it. And so the very first time I thought I should have got promoted, and I did not get promoted, I was shattered, devastated. And it was so much of a shock of like, I'm not good enough. Why didn't I get this? So what I have had to work on and mature on is I am good at my job. I care about my job. So I'm not one of those people that say, don't take it personal. It is quite frankly personal for me because I do invest personal time and I believe in work-life integration. So it does impact me, but it should not determine my character, my integrity, my worth, my value. And it's taken some maturity for me to get to that space. The other thing is I had a big role. It was my very first global role that I was managing, and it was actually testing. And if you know about testing or any type of quality work, your role is to find all the problems and to talk about all the problems all the time. Well, that is not my personality. I was like, wow, there are 100 test scripts and 95 of them passed. Let's talk about what works. And people are like, absolutely not. We want to talk about these 5 things that don't work. It is critical. How are you going to solve these? I'm like, oh, of course. But look at what does work. And it would keep me up at night because all people wanted to do was talk about what was wrong. People never wanted to talk about what was right. And so my second lesson was that your role actually has to be in alignment with you. I was so far out of alignment in doing a role that is quite frankly pretty negative. And although I delivered in that role, it took everything out of me because it was so far out of alignment with who I am. And so it is okay to say yes, but also know who you are and what you're saying yes to and making sure that you're okay with doing something that really takes you out of alignment with your core. I still would do that role again because now I'm able to articulate what I'm articulating to you. But I've always been very thoughtful going forward about what is truly the job and is the job going to have me out of alignment with who I am.
Like you said, it's an opportunity to be curious and potentially you can do it for a time to learn the skill and understand the perspective. And so there was a learning opportunity there, but then figure out, does this align with me? Does this align with my values? Does this align with the core of who I am? We talk about that in our earlier episode about spend that time reflecting and assessing, because that's the only way you get to the point where you can articulate it. So if you are asking to be on another project or you are asking to shift out of that role, you're able to articulate why.
And it's so key. I mean, I have never had a role like that since, but also at some point you get to a point in your career where people are like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, you know what? I can't tell you what I want to do next, but let me tell you what I don't want to do. Maybe I don't know the name of the role, but here's what I'm looking for. Even last night I was having a conversation. I'm like, you know what? I do not think I am a 800,000 employee company girl. I've done that. I think I'm more mid-sized. I'm looking for something where you still want someone with a consultative mindset. Like, I'm able to articulate that. So I don't know the exact role, but I know what I'm not looking for. I think that helps you even guide your next steps. So you need to have both experiences.
Well, earlier you mentioned something about therapy and not necessarily digging into that journey, but one of the things that I've tried to encourage with this series is how do we approach work in a healthy way? Because I've seen more and more Black women taking leave of absences, taking medical leave. As a matter of fact, one of the earlier statistics I cited was that educated Black women are 20% more likely to commit suicide than white women who are low income poverty level. So women facing food insecurity, housing insecurity, high achieving Black women are 20% more likely to commit suicide than them. I want to make sure that early career Black women are setting themselves up to navigate this corporate beast in a healthy way.
One, I think that it goes back to the beginning, what I was sharing. We have so much pressure. Some of it is our own. I have had to acknowledge that in my own therapy. My parents did not ask me to be perfect. They certainly don't think I'm Jesus. It's the pressure we put on ourselves, right? And I can honestly say my parents never even gave me the twice as good conversation. I just gave it to myself. I can't think of a time where my parents sat me down and said, you have to be twice as good just because you're Black and a woman. But I just inherently have that, right? And I think with that pressure of just being high achieving and wanting to achieve whatever it is for success, because everybody's definition of success is different, but that fear of failure is so powerful because I think, like, if you're first generation or you didn't come from anything, it's like, if I don't hit this, I know what that is. And it drives you. What's in your subconscious, even if you don't think it is so embedded in society and so embedded in white supremacy and just how racism is just embedded throughout this. And we, of course, being double minorities, hit it the hardest. And so how do you protect your mind and your mental space? I have been pretty consistent in therapy since 2007, and I'm pretty proud of that. But one thing that I'll say is I had a lot of pressure at work in that role that I was just telling you about. And I was traveling Monday through Thursday. And it was one week that I got on the plane and it felt like I was drowning. My logical part of me understood that I was not underwater, but I felt like I was on the plane and it was water everywhere. And I started gasping. And the flight attendant, of course, got me off the plane. And what saved me was my boss. She said, you need to take the week. You have a lot going on. This job will be here. It's okay. What if she hadn't said that? Because we could have said it to ourselves, but sometimes as women, we lead people to liberate us, even though we should be liberating ourselves. And that's a whole nother thing. But in doing that, it gave me the freedom to say, I can rest. Rest is resistance. I was overwhelmed in life, at work, and at home. And that helped me to, one, be that manager for other people going forward. But two, I didn't have to hide my multiple identities anymore. Like, it's okay to have a death in the family and it impacts you at work. And it doesn't make you less valuable. It doesn't mean you're going to get fired. And we have to create that psychological safety for ourselves and for those around us. And it's hard to do because there are people who may not do us right. But again, what I have found, most people will.
I think it's something that has become more comfortable. I've had the pleasure of having direct reports and being able to recognize when people are overwhelmed, when they are navigating a lot of life situations that happen that make us human. And you know, these are people who want to do good work. But it is also okay to take the PTO that you've been given and to take care of yourself so that you can show up your best.
You know, we don't speak enough sometimes, but I believe that's our power. I'm a Christian. And so we talk about grace a lot. Grace was not intended to say you don't do what you're supposed to do. Grace doesn't mean you don't deliver. Grace just means that, hey, we all have some shortcomings. We might need it to modify a little bit. It doesn't mean you don't do your job. It does mean people can say, hey, you've had a death in the family. This isn't mission critical. Let's put this on hold for 5 days. Give people the opportunity to give you that grace. And then when you come back, you will be able to deliver. There was a time period that I took the grace to look at the day and say, okay, my kid is sick. My husband can't get her till the afternoon. I'm going to be with her in the morning, but then I'm going to work the rest of the day and the night to catch back up. That to me is grace because I'm able to take the space to do what I need to do when I need to do it. But it doesn't mean that because my kid is sick, I don't deliver on the part that I committed to doing.
There is so much wisdom in what you're saying, and so hopefully this will resonate with young women. Let me go back to you've continued your career, you've continued to promote, you have continued to build this thriving career while you're also writing books, doing all of these things in the community and on a volunteer basis. So how does Charlitta do it?
One thing I love to tell people is there's a book called Becoming the CEO of YOU Inc. And it was written by the first female partner at Accenture. And it's a really easy read. It's like a Who Moved My Cheese. I highly recommend it. And one of the things that she talks about is how women in their careers are also good at efficiency, right? In like operational type of roles. We're able to do process improvement. We're able to go lean. All of those things we do really well at work. Then it comes to our personal lives and we have to do it all. In which at work, we would say, well, it doesn't make sense for this person to do this. But when it comes to us, we don't do that. And so she really talked about how do you start to manage your own self as a business. So the CEO of YOU Inc., you're the CEO of yourself. So when you start to get promoted, and this is a very privileged statement, but we are talking to technologists, you should look to outsource something every time you get a substantial raise or promotion because you cannot do it all. And it's not intended for you to do it all, but it is intended for it to get done. So do I need to clean my house every week or does it need to be clean? And everybody has different things they're willing to give up. So there was a point where I said, I'm never going to give up cooking. It is the way I show love to my family. And you know what? In 2020, when all that stuff was happening, and I was the only Black leader in our office, and I was leading an organization that was predominantly of white women, and I was pregnant. And you know what? I had to outsource cooking and do meal preps for my family. It's something I never thought I would do, but I needed to do it at that time. And so you have to start thinking about who can do the things that need to be done, just like you would at work, and understand that it doesn't have to be you. Now, you may say, this is my thing, and that's fine, but everything is not your thing, right? So it's okay to outsource it. And you can't outsource everything, but as you start to grow in your career, you can start to look at that. The second thing she talked about is having your own board of directors. So who is your financial advisor? Who's your operations person? Who's your people person? Who's your family person? Like, who is it? And the key here is your board of directors. You don't just get to say, well, I'm going to go talk to her because I know she's going to say what I want to say. Your board of directors is your board of directors, and you are going to them with your professional and your personal goals and life decisions that you're making consistently so that they're growing with you and investing with you as the company. And sometimes your board of directors says something that you don't want to hear. And the question is, like you said earlier, are you going to take their advice? Because they're your board of directors. And so for me, there's like the board of directors that I have, but I have a village and I have a great hands-on husband, but I have a mom who is here. And when my kids are with my mom, it is like an extension of me. I don't have mom guilt because my kids are with my mom, right? I can move the way I need to move. So when people think I'm doing it all, I'm like, no, my mom changes the sheets on my kids' bed every week. She washes their clothes. She is everything. And so do not be fooled. I say that in full transparency. I outsource and I have my mom. And what I also like to tell people is I don't have Gucci bags. I don't have Chanel. I don't have any of those things because I do spend my money in outsourcing and with my mom. And so that's the trade-off. We all make different decisions. So some people say when I get a bonus, I'm going to go buy this bag. And I'm like, oh no, when I get a bonus, I'm giving it to my mom.
Like you said, that's not your thing, but there are areas of your life that are important to you and you have to nurture those. It's about establishing a board of directors and a community of support.
Yep. And again, it doesn't go unnoticed that I do believe in who you marry. If you choose to go down that path, it matters. My husband thinks I'm amazing. I'm not even gonna lie. He's like, you just go fly. I got it here. And he does. So it does matter. If you're dating somebody who's always annoyed when you're at work, you're dating somebody who is in competition with you, that will impact your entire life. And we don't talk enough about marriage as a business and a partnership. Now, I am fortunate that I also have love, but it is also very impactful if I had somebody who said to me, hey, I don't want you to take that job because I don't want you to be away from the house. Or I don't want you around men all day. Or I don't want you to work the weekends. All of those things are different nuggets. It matters who's in your circle and who's in your village. It matters your friends that also don't understand and don't get it and they don't support you. I have friends that will send me meals if they think I'm working too hard. I feel like that's a blessing. I think that's God's favor, but I also think too much is given, much is required. You also have to give that energy back too. So in short, it may look like I do it all, but I have a great supportive village that I take care of. In turn, they take care of me. But because we do that, we're not dripped in Gucci.
But you're still fabulous.
Thank you.
Well, Charlitta, one final question I have. Is there any advice or recommendations for early career Black women who want to lay the groundwork for a thriving long-term career in tech?
Obviously, keep listening to your podcast. I think that is going to be amazing blessing that so many of us, you're filling in the gap, right, that we didn't have. The other thing I would say is, how do you build your circle or network? It doesn't have to be big, but you got to invest in a sister circle where you're willing to listen. You're also willing to give and to receive. And although I didn't have that all the time in my company, I was able to have it outside, whether it's through National Black MBA or NSBE or sorority, like wherever you can find that. I think that carries you. The other thing I would say is, how do you make sure that you're looking at your company and wherever you're working and following what's next? If it's a public company, like the shareholder conversations, the investor conversation, same thing in a private company. Where are they going and how do you start to follow that? So right now with AI, are you learning that? We know that's not forever. So what's next? And how am I positioning myself for what's next? If you don't know, ask. You can ask your manager. You can ask a senior leader, like, what things are the company talking about that is a skill? And then go learn that skill and then go do that thing and be that problem solver. That was primarily why I took the role I'm in now. Data and AI is hot right now. I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of. I'm a great leader. I also know I'm a quick learner because I was trained at Accenture to do that. So why would I not take this opportunity to lead in this space, to shape in this space, knowing that this is the next 5 to 10 years? Did I wake up 3 years ago and think I would be here today doing this role? No. But quite frankly, did anybody think they would be doing AI 5 years ago? I'm like, let me say yes to this opportunity because I know that this is going to position me for what's next.
And you are just absolutely amazing.
Thank you. And I'm just so grateful that you created this space. And I know that people are going to receive it. There's space for you and there's a space for what you have to offer. And so I hope you take that with you.
I do. I receive it. And more than anything, I hope that this becomes a place of support for young women who are early in their career, who are transitioning into this field, who want to talk with and connect with other ambitious, growing, developing young women, because it's just something near and dear to my heart. I want Black women not only to come to this industry, but to remain here and continue to rise higher.
I love that.
Charlitta, I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for the space.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Take some time to reflect on what you heard here. Be sure to follow us on IG and subscribe to our newsletter on Substack. Find us at Thriving in the Game on both. If you have a comment or recommendation, DM or email me. You can find my email in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you as we build community around thriving in the game. Until next time, take care.